Before we begin, if you enjoy real horror stories, make sure to subscribe to NeuroNightmares. Now, let's get into tonight's true horror stories. Our first story comes from a woman named Clara. In 2019, she was fresh out of college and finally landed her first full-time job in Chicago. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and for the first time in years, she could afford her own place. She found a small studio in a quiet neighborhood just outside the downtown core. The building was old, nothing fancy, chipped brick, creaky elevators, and drafty windows. But the rent was low, utilities included, and the landlord seemed decent enough. The only catch: the unit next to hers was empty. Vacant, he said. Being renovated. Would be quiet for a while. Claire didn't mind. She liked quiet. But the quiet didn't last. It started the very first night. At around 2 o'clock in the morning, she woke up to the sound of muffled voices coming through the thin wall she shared with the vacant apartment. At first, she thought it was coming from outside. Maybe someone was on the street. But the voices weren't echoing the way sound usually does in the city. They were low, flat, and they didn't stop. She pressed her ear to the wall. The words weren't clear, just whispers, two of them, overlapping, repeating something over and over. The voices would trail off, then start again. It lasted for nearly an hour. The next morning, she asked the landlord if maybe the other unit had been rented out, without her knowing. He shook his head and said no. Still empty, he told her. Nobody's moved in yet. Clara told herself it was probably just the pipes or some strange echo. Old buildings make strange noises all the time. Right. The next few nights were quiet again. But on the fifth night, she heard something new. It was a scratching sound. Not outside. Not through the wall. It was coming from her closet. She sat up in bed, heart pounding. The closet door was closed, like always. But the noise kept going. Soft at first, then more insistent, like something with nails was pressing from the inside. She opened the door slowly, using her phone's flashlight. Nothing. No rats, no mice. Just her coats, her shoes, a few boxes. She checked every corner. There was nothing there. The next day, she asked the landlord if the building had ever had pest issues. He shook his head again. "We fumigate twice a year," he said. "Never had complaints on this floor." A few nights later, it got worse. It was around 3 a.m. when Clara woke up to the sound of her front doorknob shaking violently. Not a soft jiggle. Someone was trying to get in. She froze in bed, staring at the door, too afraid to move. It rattled again, harder this time, then stopped. She grabbed her phone and tiptoed over. But when she looked through the peephole, there was nothing there. No hallway, no door across, just black, as if someone had covered the other side of the peephole with cloth. She leaned closer, and then she saw them. Two tiny red lights, blinking, staring directly at her. She backed away instantly, slammed the security bolt, and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. That morning, she emailed the landlord again. He brushed it off as probably some prank kid or drunk neighbor. Told her to keep her door locked and let him know if it happened again. But she didn't need the landlord to believe her, because now it wasn't just happening at night. The next week, while working from home, she heard the closet scratching again. Then the whispering voices came back, this time during the day. She kept the TV on to drown it out, but the final straw came just 4 days later. She was lying on the couch, trying to fall asleep after another restless night. The apartment was completely still. No traffic outside, no wind, not even the hum of her fridge. And then, clear as day, a voice called her name. Clara. It didn't come from the hallway. It didn't come from the door. It came from the air vent. She sat up instantly. The voice sounded familiar. Soft. Female. It repeated again. Clara. It was her mother's voice. But Clara's mother had died 2 years earlier. That voice didn't exist anymore. She left the apartment that night and slept in her car. The next morning, she packed what she could into her trunk and moved out. She didn't ask for her deposit back. She didn't even give notice. She just left. 3 months later, she saw a local news story about her old building. Apparently, a woman had gone missing in the unit above hers, and police had finally investigated. When they tore open the old ductwork to follow a scent, they found something no one expected. A man, naked, covered in filth, living deep inside the walls and ventilation system. And he wasn't alone. There were signs of more people, mattresses, rotting food, clothes. Evidence they'd been there a long time, maybe even before Clara moved in. In 2019, 4 friends went camping deep in Oregon's Pine Barrens. Only 3 came back. Chris was one of them. He shared his story anonymously in a forum that has since been deleted. According to him, it was supposed to be a relaxing weekend away, just old friends reconnecting with nature. They picked a remote area off a long-forgotten trail, far from the usual campgrounds. No ranger stations, no other tents nearby, just the trees. The group, Chris, Devin, Mike, and Lily, had all known each other since college. By then, life had started pulling them in different directions, but for one weekend, they promised to disconnect from phones, jobs, routines, just be out there, together. They arrived around noon and spent the afternoon setting up their tents and collecting wood. The forest was quiet, except for the occasional call of a distant bird, the kind of stillness that makes you feel like time itself has slowed down. That first night, they made a fire, shared beers, laughed about old memories. It was around midnight when things started to feel off. Chris remembered it clearly, the sound of laughter that didn't belong to any of them. It came from somewhere beyond the trees. Faint, high-pitched, almost playful. They turned off their music and listened, thinking maybe it was another group nearby. But there were no flashlights, no footsteps, just that strange laugh echoing between the trees. At first, they joked about it. Probably animals, or a weird bird call. But none of them laughed after the second time. It sounded closer. That night, no one slept well. By morning, everyone was tired and irritable. They blamed the long hike in, the stiff sleeping bags, the beer. No one wanted to admit it, but something about the forest felt wrong. Chris said the trees seemed too close together, like they were closing in. They spent most of the day hiking to a nearby overlook. On the way back, Lily swore she saw someone standing between the trees, just off the trail. A tall shape, unmoving, no face, no features, just standing there, watching. Devin went to check it out, but found nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, just silence. That night was colder. The fire didn't last as long. Everyone went to their tents early. Around 2 a.m., Chris heard rustling, then footsteps, then a zipper. He assumed it was Mike getting up to use the bathroom, but after a few minutes, Mike hadn't come back. Chris called out, quietly at first, then louder. No answer. He got out with a flashlight, woke the others. They checked both tents. Mike wasn't in either one. They started calling for him, walking in different directions around the camp. But no matter how far they went, they always ended up back where they started. The trail was gone. The markers they'd placed earlier, ribbons on branches, stacked stones, were missing or changed. The woods had started folding in on itself. It was Devin who heard the voice first. "Over here," it whispered. It was Mike's voice. They turned toward it, took a few steps. Then it came again, this time from behind them. "Guys, over here." They froze. Then another whisper. From the left, then the right, all of them sounding like Mike, but none of them sounding quite right. They ran back to camp, or at least, they thought they did. The tents were there. The fire was out, but something felt off. The logs were cold. The ashes weren't even warm, as if no one had been there for days. Lily started crying. Devin kept circling the camp, checking the woods with his flashlight. Chris sat still, listening. The whispers didn't stop. They came in waves, sometimes far away, sometimes just behind their ears. At one point, Devin shouted into the woods, "Stop messing with us, Mike. Just come back already." There was a pause. Then a voice answered, "I can't." That's when Devin took off into the trees. They didn't see him again. By morning, it was just Chris and Lily. They packed what little they could carry and tried to leave together, but the path kept leading nowhere. Even with the compass, even retracing their GPS route from earlier, nothing made sense. The sun didn't seem to move. Hours passed, and it stayed high in the sky. Eventually, Chris turned around and Lily was gone. No sound, no footsteps, no scream, just gone. He searched. He called for her. He waited, but he was alone now. He said he walked for what felt like days, ate what food he had left, drank from a nearby stream, slept in short bursts under trees. Every time he opened his eyes, he expected to see one of them standing nearby, or hear his name. He did hear it once. Whispers. A chorus. His name, over and over, in Mike's voice, in Devin's voice, and Lily's voice too. He stopped answering. Eventually, he gave up. He stopped trying to find the trail. He just walked, one foot in front of the other, for hours, then days, until he didn't know where he was anymore. And then, suddenly pavement. He stumbled out of the woods barefoot, scratched, starving, and collapsed on the side of a highway. A driver spotted him and called for help. Chris was taken to the hospital, dehydrated, disoriented. He didn't say much, just that his friends were gone, and the forest wouldn't let them leave. No one believed him. Search and rescue combed the Pine Barrens for weeks. No sign of Devin, no sign of Lily, no Mike. Only their campsite was found, abandoned. The gear left untouched, tent still pitched, sleeping bags zipped up, like they'd never left. Chris never told the full story again. Some say he moved across the country, changed his name. Others think he stayed in Oregon, keeping to himself. But what happened out there, whatever took hold of those woods, left something behind in him, and it never let go. Emily was 27 when she moved into the rental house. It sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, nestled between rows of matching homes, with neat lawns and trimmed hedges. On paper, it was perfect, affordable, newly renovated, and far from the noise of city life. But what made it most appealing to her at the time was the isolation. She needed a place to heal. Months earlier, Emily had walked away from a life that had unraveled slowly and cruelly. An engagement broken off, a job lost without warning, and a string of friendships that faded when things got hard. She told herself the new house would be her restart, a clean slate. She moved in late autumn. The air had begun to cool. The trees, losing their leaves, whispered with every gust of wind. The neighbors were polite but distant. They waved, smiled, but never lingered. It suited her. For the first few weeks, she welcomed the silence. Then came the calls. It was the fourth night in the house. She'd just finished unpacking her last box, made a cup of tea, and was about to go to bed when the landline rang. The phone had come with the house, an old, cream-colored model mounted to the kitchen wall. She hadn't even given out the number. Curious, she answered. Nothing, just a low hum. No clicks, no static, no voice. She hung up, assuming it was a wrong number. But the next night, it rang again. Same time, 12:03 a.m. Again, no one on the other end. By the third night, the sound made her stomach tighten. It rang once, sharply, then silence after she picked up. On the fourth night, she waited before answering. Let it ring 3 times. When she finally picked up, there was a pause, and then a voice. "I can see you." Male. Deep. Calm. Then the line disconnected. Emily stood frozen in her kitchen. She didn't move for a long time, just stared at the receiver in her hand. She tried to reason with herself. A prank, maybe. A crossed wire. She went online, searched forums, read dozens of posts about phantom calls, misrouted numbers, power surges causing phones to act up. The explanations helped, until the calls kept coming. She unplugged the landline, left it hanging like a lifeless limb against the wall. The next night, her cell phone rang. But there was a problem. Emily's phone had no SIM card. She hadn't set up her new plan yet. No service. No number to call. Yet at 12:03 a.m., it lit up. Unknown number. When she answered, silence again. Then the same voice. "I can see you." She dropped the phone. The next morning, she went to a hardware store and bought motion sensor lights and a cheap security camera with local recording. She didn't want to rely on Wi-Fi or cloud apps. She set it up in her living room, facing the front door, and checked the footage every morning. For a few nights, nothing happened. No calls, no lights, She started to relax again. Maybe it had stopped. But then, one night, she woke up with the feeling that someone had just been in the room. No sound, no creaking floorboards, just cold air on her skin, and that racing heartbeat that doesn't come from dreams. Her phone was on the nightstand. The screen was on. No missed call. No message. Just lit up. Waiting. That morning, she checked the footage, and there it was. At 12:03 a.m., the camera had caught a brief flicker of movement in the frame. Just a shift of shadow near the hallway. She paused it, rewound, played it again. This time she saw it. A shape. Someone standing behind her on the couch. She had been watching TV. She remembered that night clearly. A true crime documentary. Blanket pulled up to her chin, popcorn in her lap. But in the corner of the frame, just behind the couch, the figure. Tall, still, almost blending into the dark, but unmistakably human. They didn't move. Not until the phone on the wall rang. Then, the figure turned toward the kitchen and vanished from frame. Emily watched it over and over again, unable to breathe. She called the police. They arrived quickly, checked the doors and windows. Everything was locked. Nothing broken. No signs of forced entry. Then they found the attic door open. Emily didn't even know the house had an attic. It was one of those old, square panels in the hallway ceiling. No pull string, just a dusty outline she'd never noticed before. One of the officers fetched a ladder, climbed up, and shined his flashlight inside. What he found made her sick. Nestled between beams and insulation were signs of someone living up there. An old sleeping bag, food wrappers, empty water bottles, even a small notebook filled with scribbles and phone numbers, including hers. Fingerprints were lifted from the attic door, from the hallway, from the walls. But no one was inside. They searched the house, searched the surrounding area. Nothing. Whoever had been living there knew the house better than she did. The working theory was that he'd been coming down at night, through the attic access, while she slept, watching, listening, calling from inside the house or nearby. Emily moved out that same week, packed what she could in a single night, and stayed in a motel until she found somewhere new. She never kept a landline again, and she never stayed in a house with an attic. Some nights, she still wakes up at 12:03 a.m. Phone beside her. No number, no call, just the feeling that someone is nearby, watching, waiting. Derek didn't scare easy. He was a long-haul trucker with nearly 2 decades on the road. He'd driven through whiteouts in the Rockies, crossed frozen stretches of the Yukon with tire chains snapping, and once had to sleep in his rig for 3 days, waiting for a flooded bridge to reopen. He'd heard stories from other drivers about things seen in the dark, out on those lonely stretches of America where the map feels like it just gives up. But Derek wasn't a man of ghost stories or folklore. He believed in oil pressure, gear shifts, and miles per gallon. That was it. That changed one night, somewhere in Nevada. He was hauling aluminum, light load, long route, headed west through the high desert, not far from a place locals called Black Rock. The sun had gone down hours ago, leaving the horizon a flat black line where sky met earth. Just sand, sagebrush, and the occasional weather-beaten signpost. The road was empty. No headlights ahead, no taillights behind. Around 1:30 a.m., his dash flickered. Instruments cut out for half a second, just enough to make him tap the panel, thinking it might be a loose connection. Then the engine stuttered. Once, twice, then silence. Dead silence. The truck rolled for a few yards, then stopped. No warning, no sputtering, just off. Derek tried the key. Nothing, not even a click. No power, no signal on his phone either. No surprise there. This was one of those dead zones, marked on every CB forum with a warning. Don't count on bars between mile marker 213 and 260. So, he did what any seasoned driver would do. Locked the doors, flipped on his flashlight, popped the hood. The desert night was cold. Still, no wind, not even the usual hum of insects. Just the sound of gravel under his boots as he stepped out. Under the hood, everything looked fine. No smoke, no smells, nothing out of place. He tapped the battery cables, checked the fuel line. tested the wires he could reach. But deep down, he knew this wasn't mechanical. That's when he saw the eyes. Far off, maybe 50 yards from the truck, just past the edge of his flashlight's reach, 2 pinpoints of dull orange light, low to the ground at first. He blinked, thinking maybe it was reflection, glass, maybe, or an animal. But then they rose, higher, until they were 6, maybe 7 feet off the ground. They blinked, then moved sideways, smoothly, slowly, like whatever they belonged to was circling, staying just outside the beam. Derek froze. He wasn't sure why, but something deep in his chest told him, don't shine the light on it. He lowered his arm, back toward the cab, climbed in, locked the doors again. He sat there, in the dark, listening. At first, just his own breath, the ticking of the engine cooling. Then, something else. A soft scraping, not on the window, underneath. From beneath the truck, it circled slowly. Metal creaked with weight that didn't belong. Then came the sound of nails, long ones, dragging across steel. He reached for his flashlight again, but stopped. Whatever it was, he didn't want to see it. Not fully. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. It was hard to track time without lights, without a clock. Every so often, there would be silence. Then scratches. Above him, on the roof. A low thump. Then another. He kept telling himself, this is a trick of the dark. Exhaustion. Maybe coyotes. Maybe something else. But that voice, the one beneath all the logic, the one from the old part of the brain, said, don't move. Then, just before sunrise, there was a knock on the window. Not a scratch. A knock. Firm. Human. Derek flinched. He turned slowly. A man stood outside the cab, covered in dust from head to toe. Wore an old brown coat, the kind you see on ranchers. His face was lined like cracked earth, and he didn't blink much. Derek cracked the window just an inch. The man said one thing. You should never stop here at night. Then he walked away. Just like that. No explanation. No introduction. Just those words, and he was gone. Derek waited until full daylight before getting out. The air had shifted. Warmer now. Brighter. Normal. He checked under the truck, and that's when he saw them. Deep gashes, long, uneven claw marks, raked across the undercarriage, from front to back. Too long to be a cougar. Too deep for any known predator out there. And clumps of hair. Gray. Coarse. With a burnt metallic smell. When a mechanic finally arrived, he took one look and said he'd never seen anything like it. Took samples. Sent them in. The report came back 2 weeks later. The hair didn't match any known species. Not coyote. Not wolf. Not bear. Nothing on file. Derek never took that route again. He still drives. Still hauls. But now he carries extra fuel. A backup battery. And he never, ever stops near Black Rock. Not at night. Not ever. 3 bedrooms. A fenced yard. Quiet neighborhood. A patch of forest nearby that turned golden every autumn. The kind of place that made people say, this is where you build a life. They painted the nursery. Even though they didn't have kids yet, they planted a small herb garden out back. On weekends, they'd walk hand in hand through the neighborhood, waving at joggers and retirees mowing their lawns. But like a scratch beneath wallpaper, something didn't sit right. It started small. A thump. Somewhere above the ceiling. One night, around 3 a.m. Jake heard it first. He rolled over, mumbled something about old pipes, and went back to sleep. Lily thought maybe it was raccoons on the roof, or expansion, settling wood. But then it happened again. Louder. 3 knocks this time. Not like something falling. More deliberate. Jake went up into the attic the next day with a flashlight and a broom, expecting to find a bird's nest or maybe signs of squirrels. Nothing. Just insulation. Dust. A few old paint cans left by the previous owners. He tapped the beams. Shined his light across every corner. Nothing moved. Still, the sound returned. Again. And again. A week later, the lights began flickering. Not in the whole house. Just the hallway near the attic hatch. Lily replaced the bulbs. It helped for a day. Then the kitchen light joined in. Then the bathroom. Always at night. always when one of them was alone. They try not to talk about it too much. Try to laugh it off. Stress, maybe. Adjusting to a new place. Everyone says owning a home is full of surprises. But surprises don't empty your fridge. It was Jake who noticed it. He went for a midnight snack one night. Just a sandwich. But when he opened the fridge, the pack of turkey was gone. He checked the trash, the counters. Thought maybe Lily had thrown it out. She hadn't. The next day, it was the yogurt. Then eggs. Every time, just a few things missing. Never enough to feel like theft. Never enough to make sense. That's when Lily found the journal. She had gone up into the attic again, this time to grab a box of fall decorations. The kind with orange leaves and plastic pumpkins. Something to feel normal. As she moved an old cardboard box, it slipped from her hands and spilled onto the insulation. Beneath it, something black and leather-bound. A notebook, worn at the corners. No dust on it. She opened it. The handwriting was small, tight, precise. Dozens of pages, filled with daily entries. The most recent ones were dated only 4 days before they moved in. She flipped back. Each entry was a log. When the lights came on, what groceries were brought in, when Jake left for work, when Lily showered, times, sounds, smells. One sentence repeated across several pages. I hear them talking about the baby room again. She felt her hands go cold. She took the journal to Jake, and that's when they called the police. An officer came, took a statement, and recommended they install a few cameras, just to be safe. Said there wasn't much else they could do unless someone had broken in. So Jake set up 2 cameras, one in the hallway, one facing the attic hatch. That night, neither of them slept well. But when morning came, Jake checked the camera footage first thing. What he saw made him drop the phone. At exactly 2:47 a.m., the attic hatch creaked open. A pale hand, thin-veined, emerged. Then a face, hollow-eyed, barely more than skin stretched over bone. The figure crawled out slowly, moved on all fours like a spider, turned its head toward the master bedroom, and then stood. He stood in the hallway, still as stone, watching. He didn't go inside, just watched. For 23 minutes. Then, just as slowly, he climbed back up into the attic, closing the hatch behind him. Jake didn't let Lily see the footage. He just told her to pack a bag. They left the house within the hour, drove to a motel 2 towns over, called the police again. This time, a full team came out. They searched the attic from top to bottom, and that's when they found him, buried in the insulation, curled up between beams, wrapped in a sleeping bag dark with stains and dust. A man, late 30s, dirty, thin, wild-eyed, clutching a screwdriver like it was a talisman. He didn't fight, didn't run, just blinked at the flashlight beams and whispered something under his breath. They cuffed him, took him away. Jake and Lily were told later that the man had been living there for at least 6 months, feeding off groceries, drinking from the bathroom faucet when they slept, crawling down at night, avoiding motion sensors, watching them, listening. And in his journal, now in police custody, was one last entry, scrawled with a shaking hand. Just 9 words. They're starting to notice me. I need a new attic soon. If these stories kept you up tonight, make sure you subscribe to NeuroNightmares. More are coming.